So a user by the name of Veritas48 has started a project that's basically one great big honkin' Strawman. And I'm here to tell him, no.
I've been trying to figure out how to approach this issue without getting people angry.
Well, the more I think about the points you made, the more I get good and pissed, so good job.
It seems as though when I even remotely refer to atheism as a view or a belief, I get scores of angry comments and even some video responses attempting to condescendingly correct me as if I've made some sort of blasphemous mistake.
You have. It's called a straw man. It's called you're assigning our position to us instead of letting us define it for ourselves. And yeah, I can see how that would get someone good and pissed. I am.
Generally the charge is, that we theists have no idea what we're talking about and we're simply idiots because everyone knows that atheism is not a view or a belief. It's a lack of belief in God. Or as some put it, it's an approach to claims, to theistic claims.
It's not even that. Atheism can be a response to theism, but atheism is actually the default position. You have to have heard of theism to be able to go from an atheist to a theist. But if you've never heard of theism, then you are not a theist, therefore you are an atheist. Atheism is not necessarily a response to theism. Get that through your head.
Now guys, I'm nowhere near as ignorant as you think I am on this issue.
Insert cheap shot here.
I know this is a very popular view on YouTube, however, I've always seen it as irreparably flawed, considering it's a nebulous idea, it's hardly ever unpacked as to what it actually means, and it borders on being incoherent, and it obfuscates the issue.
It only does that if you insist on the world being black and white.
Thus, I simply refer to atheists under the more healthy definition, which is the belief that there is no God.
Hello, Captain Strawman. In other words, you are going to insist that atheists defend the position you've assigned to them. Do I really have to explain to you how this is wrong?
And I really like people who argue this way. It shows that they can get their hands dirty, unlike those who think they can just get away with sniping theistic views all day without ever peeking their heads out to take a shot or two from us theists.
Aw, poor kid. People ain't treating him fair. It's not our fault that your beliefs are chowder-headed and that you're having a difficult time refuting ours. But you could at least have the courtesy to take our beliefs on our own terms.
Want to ask the atheist community some questions about their atheism. Namely, what good reasons are there to become an atheist? Or another way of putting it would be to ask, what good reasons are there to think that atheism is true?
This is where your error is made painfully clear. Atheism is not necessarily a positively asserted belief. It doesn't have to be. It can be. It does not have to be. Atheism is merely not being a theist, no matter how you came to that position. And I know you don't like that definition. Too fart-eating bad.
Now, before the onslaught comes my way, I want to make it clear that none of us are trying to shift the burden of proof here. No, we're not claiming that atheists have the onus.
Of course you are. That's exactly what you're doing. I mean, you're saying that atheists have to defend the idea of there being no God. That is trying to shift the burden of proof. But the truth is that if atheists say anything at all, what they're saying is that theist claims fail.
What we're going to try and do is persuade you to what is referred to as the traditional view of atheism. Anthony Flew once called this positive atheism. That is the belief that there is no such being as God. And this is contrasted with what Flew calls negative atheism.
That really ought to be passive atheism, not negative.
And it's the now popular idea that you hear all over YouTube that says atheism is really just non-theism. That is, that atheism is simply akin to lacking theistic belief and nothing more than that. You simply don't buy what we theists have to sell, and that's it, and that's atheism.
So how is you not liking that position anything other than tough shit? Explain that to me.
Now, traditionally, atheism has been the denial of the existence of God. The Oxford English Dictionary defines atheism as disbelief in or denial of the existence of a God.
Yeah, that's because there was a time when God belief was simply assumed, that everyone figured believing in God was the default. That was traditional. But we live in more educated times. People have more of a clue now about how God belief is not automatic. So the definition you're quoting, it may be traditional, but it's fucking wrong.
Another way of describing negative atheism would be to say that instead of A, the negation, theos, God, no God, instead of that, the A turns into something like amoral.
What? That's the same thing. I don't see the distinction you're trying to draw between A and ah. It's the same fucking thing.
You know, atheists can sort of mean whatever they want by referring to themselves as atheists, right? There's no rule that says atheism has to be this one thing that everyone must subscribe to, right?
Wow, that's so far the first and only thing you said that I agree with.
First, negative atheism is too loose a definition because it includes people who hold to different positive positions that do not consider themselves any sort of atheist. For example, agnostics withhold judgment on the issue of God's existence, though they may lean one direction or the other.
So you can't handle the fact that it's not a binary system, that it is in fact a spectrum of belief. Tough. Get over it. I mean, the world does not necessarily dance to your tune, and neither do people's beliefs or lack thereof. Get over it.
It's also quite unclear what negative atheism is actually getting at when it's unpacked. I mean, what is a non-view in this sort of debate, and how can a non-view be justified?
It's not a non-belief. It's not a non-position. What it is saying, I have not been convinced. I have no reason to believe in a God, therefore I do not believe in a God. It's not, I believe there is no God, which I realize gives you the screaming memes. You want someone to say, as an atheist, I do not believe. Tough. What these people are saying is, I am unconvinced. They're not saying I'm uncertain. They're saying, that claim failed, that claim failed, that claim failed. I have not seen a claim that hasn't failed yet, therefore I do not believe. Why is that so difficult for you to understand? Where's that mental block in your brain?
You're really just giving a narrative of a psychological state, and it plays no epistemological role whatsoever in the conversation. It's not a view that can actually be true or false. It's just a psychological state.
And that's what really bugs you, isn't it? We're able to point at your claims and go, that failed. And you want to be able to hit back, don't you? Sorry.
Further, when you come across an issue like God's existence, it's impossible to have the sort of neutrality that negative atheism is purporting to offer. I mean, regardless of what you may say on this, you've already made some sort of decision, even if you don't vocalize it, some sort of judgment on this issue. It's impossible to go backward into the sort of non-belief position you once had when, say, you were an infant baby. That's simply not possible.
Once again, you reveal your bias. You really want atheism to be a positively declared there is no God. And that's not necessarily what it is, and that seems to bug the crap out of you. But all I have to do is refute the claims of people who say there's a God to be able to go back to zero and say there's no reason to believe in one. That's how this works.
It would be silly to call a rock an atheist.
Exactly what God does a rock believe in?
So from here on out, when I refer to atheism, I'm going to be referring to some form of positive atheism, because in my mind, I just laid out enough considerations for you to at least tentatively abandon negative atheism.
And this is why your entire premise is just one big honkin' straw man. What you've basically just said to me, to all the atheists on YouTube, is, here's what I say you believe, now defend it. And I think I speak for a lot of us when I give you a big hearty fuck off. Bye-bye.